And action. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Kelly. I'm a professor at Loyola, and I'm the director of the School of Mental Health Advanced Practice Program. With me today is Gabriela Ramirez and Angie Halstead. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in a minute and talk a bit about the SMHAPP program. They are this close to graduating and being done with the program, almost there. And they've done tremendous work in very different contexts and different issues, and I'm excited to have them talk about that a bit. What I'm going to do today is introduce the SMHAPP a bit for those of you who are new to us, and then also give over to the pair, Gabby and Angie, to talk about their own experiences in SMHAPP. And then I'm going to tell you about a kind of innovative thing we do with this program where we ask people to design or think of, design, and deliver an intervention in their schools that's targeted at a community or school level. And they're going to talk about the projects that their colleague has done. And I'm going to give you any additional information you might need in deciding whether you're interested to apply to our program. For this round, August 1st is the deadline. You can certainly apply before then, but we're looking always to get new cohorts going. But this is the third cohort I'm talking to. These are two fabulous members, Angie and Gabby. And I guess what I'd like to do maybe before I ask you to talk about the SMHAPP program, if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and talk about your background and kind of what drew you to the program to begin with. So Gabby, could you start us?
Sure. So I've been working with Chicago Public Schools now for, I believe it's going to be, this is my 18th school year. And I was looking to, when I found out about this program, I actually got a mailer and, it arrived at my home and I thought, wow, this sounds really interesting. I was feeling pretty burned out at school, working as a school social worker. I was feeling like I was spinning my wheels and I felt like I needed support and I needed more tools. And so in this program, I did find that. I found a cohort of other school social workers that have been extremely supportive. And then I also learned so much about evidence-based, evidence-informed programs to work with students and to support their social emotional needs. So I've learned a lot, and I've also just really appreciated all the connections that I've made with other school social workers. And we also had a school psychologist in our cohort. So it's been really nice to just get to know what, some of our struggles were very similar. It's just been really nice to get to know how all the schools are different, even though some of the needs are the same, but how they're tackled differently in different cities or states, and just the type of supports that can be put in place. So overall, it's been a great experience.
Thank you, Gabby. Yeah, that's a really nice kind of opener to talk about this. Angie, how about you? Talk about your background and what brought you to this program?
Okay. My name is Angie Halstead. I'm a school social worker for the Fremont Public Schools in Fremont, Nebraska. I learned about the SMHAPP program through a link that I received from my state School Social Work Association. The School Social Work Association of Nebraska actually came through on I think it was on a Facebook post. So social media was the way that I learned about it. And I have been a school social worker for, this is my 26th school year ending, which is a lifetime. I was looking for a way to grow professionally and learn from other school social workers on how they tackle the challenges that face them on a daily basis. And what I found, like Gabby said, was a cohort, and I feel like, lifelong friends actually has grown out of this group of professionals. I've learned so much about evidence-based practices that just really backed up some of the things that I had learned in graduate school. But I hadn't been in graduate school for a long time, and I really liked school. So I wanted to grow professionally, and that's what drew me to the program.
Thank you. And as you were talking, Angie, and I realized combined, you have almost 50 years of school social work experience in this diet. That's fantastic. And what it speaks to for me, and what I want to get into for a few minutes now, is this program was designed in part to really hit a lot of different kind of aspects of needs people have, and try to meet them. And we've heard a few examples already that kind of feeling a little burnout or feeling kind of stuck in a rut, or also just kind of wanting to get back to a learning kind of experience and become more aware of what evidence-based practices there are. And I love that you said, Angie, that a lot of what the courses gave you was affirming and reinforcing, right? There were things you were already doing that the evidence that we shared showed was going to work. And there's a lot of really excellent things both of you have done. I'll brag on you before we go. Just quickly, all of these classes and the certificate and the projects you're about to hear about are really trying to address a main problem. We are problem solvers in school mental health. We are very interested in making our schools better and making our practice better. The problem I'm going to talk about is more related to how we support each other, how we design training, how we make it possible for people to do some of the innovative things you're about to hear about. We do that through technology. As Angie just said, this cohort and the other cohorts I've had, this is the third of 4 cohorts, by the way, that we've had so far. All of them have said similar things, that they feel really connected to the people that they've been working with through the program, even though the way it's designed and the way that people are in many states as they do the work, they're not actually together physically very much. And this is pre-COVID, e-learning and all the stuff we're doing right now. So we get together basically one time officially in the program for a summer week get together, and that's it in terms of the time we're physically together. And even that is 3 days. I said a week, but it's really during the week. But that doesn't mean people haven't made connections and stayed in touch in lots of other ways, and the tech really has facilitated that. This is all rooted in a model that I'm going to ask Gabby and Angie to talk about the projects that they saw their colleague do. And again, I'm going to brag on these guys before we go. So what is the problem? The problem we've heard a bit about already. The problem is basically we have a lot of skills. We have a lot of desire to affect our schools at a macro level and to change schools at district and community levels, as well as school levels at a tier 1. But for a lot of reasons, people in our field don't get to do that or don't feel like they have enough time or preparation. They also don't have an ongoing kind of collaborative relationship with a supervisor. Many of us do not have a supervisor once we're through our graduate training. And so that's one of the issues we try to address with this program is we don't give you a clinical supervisor per se, but we give you a professional learning community of people who come together, support each other, enjoy each other, and teach each other. The other issue that we're very keen on addressing as a problem is people's comfort level and skill and access to data. And so we want you to get comfortable using data, know what data is the right data to use, and we use that throughout all the different courses we do. And the good news is that we've done research on a variety of things that relate to this program, and eventually we will evaluate this program empirically as well. But for now, we know that a lot of people in school mental health are basically trying to do a lot of what we might call ecologically evidence-informed work. So things at the tier 1, tier 2 level, community level. They want to, they have the aptitude and desire. They need to have some barriers removed. They need to have some added training and supports. And one of the ways you can do that is one of the things that this program was based on is a professional learning community model, which I pilot tested in Michigan, Canada, and Chicago. Okay, so a big part, and both Gabby and Angie have already talked about this, is the importance of the evidence-based, evidence-informed. If you do this program, one of the things you'll be challenged to do is to look at your own practice now, look at the things you want to change about your school, and decide what are the foundations of those things that I want to do. Are they rooted in evidence? Are they rooted in authority-based practice, things that we've done because we've always done them? If we don't have evidence for what we're doing, can we at least collect data to show what we're doing is or isn't working? And we used one of the focal points of that is looking at recent work I've done with some team members around how limited our knowledge base is about trauma-informed approaches at the tier 1 level in schools. And all of us today that are listening to this and part of this conversation today, we're in a traumatic event, we're in a crisis, we're in a pandemic, we're going to figure out how to go back to schools in the fall, hopefully. But we're also finishing school years, and we're dealing with the aftermath of what it means to finish a school year where all the learning was done remotely. And all of that has traumatic impacts. And so we want, if anything, to be even more concerned that we go back to school in a way that is evidence informed. Okay. So a big goal of what we're trying to do is really use the technology that we've developed. And we have a website, schoolsocialwork.net. Both Gabby and Angie have written articles for that as part of their coursework. Those articles have been very well received. They've also been involved in providing various supports in other ways, mentoring people. Gabby was part of a webinar series that was done around early childhood and did a fantastic job with that. To date, webinars that have been done by cohort members of this third cohort have been viewed on our YouTube channel about 12,000 times, which is amazing. So this is a group of social emotional leaders, and you're going to meet two of them a little bit more in a minute. All right, so this is the network. This is another place that we do stuff. People have hosted live chats during that time. That's another option and an assignment you'll do. And we're really interested in continuing to grow this community. I mean, it's a bittersweet moment to be with both of them, Gabby, you and Angie today, because this is kind of the beginning of a goodbye of this phase. And, you know, we're excited to graduate you. We're also excited to have you stay involved in various ways. Some of the ways we're going to do that is hopefully communicate continuously through the network, as well as write more articles for the .NET. This is one of our colleagues, Tanya Hernandez. She's been very involved in her state of Nevada in designing services. And again, this is just an example of the model that we did, as I asked people to really think critically about a need in their schools. And in her case, she was actually tasked with coming up with a model for doing services in this COVID time. And it was so impactful that her superintendent actually took it to the State Board of Ed, and they adopted elements of that for a statewide rollout. We've had people showing their work. Actually, Angie, I apologize. I left you out of a webinar as well. I shouldn't have done that. Angie was a crucial part of the high school webinar, and she gave her expertise in Nebraska about how she's doing school social work in this time. And we've had other people do things about alternative education and other ways of doing it. So this is the last slide I want to talk about, and then I want to give over to ask both of my panelists today to talk about each other's work. This is that cohort meetup. We met last July. We won't be able to meet this July, even though we're going to do a summer institute and do it virtually this year. But we will be together hopefully soon in the coming summers. But this group came together. They'd already been together online in classes for a full year, but they were able to come together and get to know each other in person. And like Angie said, I think there's been some really strong bonds and friendships created. So when we do the courses, actually, I misspoke. I got two more slides. When we do the courses, here's what you'll do. You'll do an integrative seminar, year-long. All of it's a cohort model, so you're together. Gabby and Angie were together the entire 2 years. The first year is really around learning about the role of school mental health, where it fits, what people want from us, how we tackle some of the big issues happening right now, race and equity issues, school to prison pipeline, supporting parents, trauma-informed approaches. Those are just a few examples of things. SEL, social emotional learning. You over year one, figure out a project that you want to really investigate and do something about in your school. You identify a need. I'll show you how we do that in a minute. And then that's taught by me and some other colleagues. I have guest lecturers and people join us. And then in year two, we do it all again with the same cohort, though this time it's about implementing what they've begun to develop as a project proposal. Additionally, we have 3 other courses that we do that are called asynchronous courses, meaning they're done in modular form, where you study evidence-based practice and learn about kind of what does and doesn't work in schools and how we know that when we say that. Strength-based interventions, so things like solution-focused brief therapy, motivational interviewing, mindfulness, and how to apply that to whatever context you're working in. And then the last class is the class on data that's taught by one of our colleagues, Professor Capio, who's an expert school social worker and has been a long time now special ed administrator and coach. And she teaches all things data. Okay. Actually, let me stop there for a minute. Did you all want to say anything about the courses or anything that stood out to you that was particularly helpful?
I mean, I found the data class really helpful, and also the specific strategies from the solution focused brief therapy or motivational interviewing when I was doing my parent groups, because it just reminded me, I mean, it was very specific strategies to use with the parents that I had not thought about, or if I learned them, I mean, I forgot them, you know? Um, so I found that it was like allowing the parents to take the lead in the discussions. It generated a lot more dialogue and trust between the parents. And so I really felt like the direct, you know, benefit of using these strategies that I learned with the parents. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Angie, how about you? Anything that stood out to you?
Um, I like the data class as well, which was surprising because I hadn't really liked data before.
I've heard that before from people. Yeah.
Also, the strength-based interventions in schools, I really enjoyed watching the real life scenarios that were presented as part of the lessons that we had. The evidence-based practice in schools I liked as well. I really enjoyed reading your book, Dr. Kelly, that was part of the curriculum. We had online access, but actually bought the book. So
okay.
I'm contributing to your.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, that bought my wife a coffee. So thank you very much.
There
That
you
was
go.
yeah. Well, thank you. That's great to know that all those classes spoke to different parts of your practice. And as people are listening to you today, obviously the work you've been doing is in very different grade levels. It's certainly in different states and different contexts. And it'll be interesting to hear kind of what you learned from each other about that. So the last slide, and then I am going to ask them to introduce each other and talk more about what they've seen from each other's work, is this idea that we take a 2-year approach to really designing and implementing something in a school setting. And this is part of the advanced practice program. And it's really the heart of it in some ways, because we want people to bring all those cool things you just heard about, the strength-based approaches, the way to use data, the way to think about evidence, and to put it all together, identify a problem that's in the school. It could be currently, it could be a problem that just is on your mind and you think you want the school to think about it more. But it's really marshaling those resources through a needs assessment, through data that already exists in the school, as well as other things you might use from the courses to collect data. Along the way, it's really important, and everybody in this cohort did a great job of taking this approach, that you not view this as you are a solo act and you're the only person doing it. But everybody that is effective in schools as a clinician has to have a lot of people with them. So building key alliances, people who are going to support you, stand up for you, provide resources for you, just join committees with you. And everybody's expected to come up with some ideas about that. So the ones that are in green is basically what year 1 is people to do those things. They get feedback from me, they get feedback from an expert panel of outside people I have read it. And then they get feedback, most importantly, in some ways from their cohort. And they're able to then take it to the next year. Also, I should say they present on it in the summer. So that's that wonderful slide of everybody standing together. They present their work and then they get a chance to implement it in year 2. We also are really clear with people coming in that implementation in schools is messy and it's time consuming and it doesn't happen overnight. So people sometimes at the end of the 2 years are at the beginning of fully implementing something. Sometimes they are not yet even there, but they've really figured out what the key places are they're going to operate. And sometimes they're really fully into a program and they're already evaluating it. But all those things are fair game, because what we know is the research shows it's a 3 to 5 year process to implement something in a school effectively. So I'm going to now stop talking and go out of this share screen. And I'm going to ask who's going to go first to introduce their colleague. Did you guys figure that out? All right, Gabby, you want to go?
Yeah.
So let me, before you start, let me just clarify to people what's going to happen. I've asked all the cohort that have met in these dyads over the course of the 2 years, where they've supported each other, read each other's work, given encouragement, to take a few minutes to just talk about the other person's work, not their own work, but talk about the other person's work and what that work is meant to them. So Gabby, take it away.
Sure. I'll start by saying that it's been a true pleasure to get to know Angie, and she's an amazing school social worker. And I want to say, she did introduce herself and say she's been doing this for a long time, for 26 years. But, in just talking with her, she's not a show off, she's very modest. She did win School Social Worker of the Year one time, right? And she's been a social worker doing it all by herself for many, many years. So I know, Angie, you just recently mentioned that your district hired another social worker. So there will be 2 social workers for, over 4,000 students. So that's very impressive. So Angie's project had to deal, school change project involved the implementation of a mentoring program called Check and Connect. And so it's in the high school, it's at the high school level. And although Angie was working for the entire Fremont district, being the only social worker, she did concentrate her time at the high school. And this program already had been in implementation. So Angie's role involved like increasing the number of students that were involved with this program. So it went from about 26 to 87.
Wow.
And that's really impressive. And also providing more supports to the actual mentors, and then using her knowledge, her expertise, and her connections with the children and the families to create the right pairs, students and mentors. So just creating the right relationships, using her expertise, knowing what the families, what some of their needs were, and then providing that support to the mentors, and allowing for them to meet, the mentors to meet weekly, just giving them that technical support that they needed and the opportunity to learn from each other. So, and so the Check and Connect program, basically it's about the goal behind this school change project was increasing graduation rates. And so the Check and Connect program has 4 components. So it's the mentors, and then also the check deals with checking how kids are doing, in how they're doing in academics, how they're doing in attendance, and how they're doing with behavior. And then the Connect is actually like getting to know the kids and finding out which supports within the school or in the community can help them, stay on track and prevent dropout rates. So whether that's counseling or some kind of support that the family needed, or activities, extracurricular activities within the school. So it's just creating a community for the students to support them and preventing, them to fall through the cracks. And then the 4th component is parent and family engagement. So just maintaining communication. It was very important for the mentors to stay connected to the families and talk about, this is what's happening with your child, or, how can we problem solve and make this better? So I just think that that's amazing, and every high school should be, it's so important, because adolescence is such a hard time or phase. It's the pressure of having to be more independent with your schoolwork, fitting in, being cool. I don't know if that's the right word anymore, but so it's a hard, very difficult 4 years for, I think, all kids. But this program, I think it's very important, and I think this work is very valuable, and I think teachers or mentors probably really enjoyed having this connection. Like, this is a formal program that we're doing. This is how I'm going to support you. This is why it's important. So just validating the work, and I think it's a wonderful program. Mm-hmm. And I know, Angie, you mentioned that you want to stay connected with the high school, but now that the other social worker was hired, she'll be in the high school. Is that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you go back to the little ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
K through 6.
Uh-huh. Trying to think of anything else. You know, Angie did find that as for all of us, you know, this school year was cut short, but she did see that 61% of the kids had improved with attendance, or I don't know if I'm saying that right, Angie, but you said like, or they reduced their risk with
Yes.
attendance, and then academic problems and also behavior problems. Like there was a reduction of risk in 100% of the kids. So with their behavior referrals. So I may not be saying that all correctly, but
You're right.
She got it?
She got it.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
good.
and Gabby, thank you for that. I mean, what also people can go look if they're interested is Angie, one of her assignments was to write an article for the .NET site, schoolsocialwork.net, and you wrote about a coalition of people that you've been part of for a long time, and being able to kind of tap into that in various ways to support the youth. So a very rooted community-based school social work approach too, that I think is really cool, Gabby, that she was able to do. And again, I've learned a lot from you about that, Angie. I appreciate it. So, well, can we ask you, Angie, to tell us about Gabby?
Sure. Gabby, I just want to say, has been a great dyad partner. I think her and I are very similar in that we tend to be more on the quiet side. So we really had to come out of our, get out of our own comfort zone in order to push ourselves to be a little bit more out. I'm not that outgoing. So I just really appreciated her. She's so even keel and so laid back. And I think that she would be awesome to work with as a colleague. I think she's very caring and very compassionate, and I'm certain awesome school social worker. And I wish you the best in your continued work with the Chicago Public Schools, especially in this coming year. I think it's going to be a really interesting time for everybody. Gabby works for an early childhood special education school. She has a pretty high caseload.
Oop, she froze up there. Let's see if she comes back. So Angie, I don't know, you were frozen up. If you're still talking, we can't hear you. So we can edit out any of this later, so don't worry about that. But if you want to sign out and come back in, that would probably be good to be able to finish. Good. Still.
And I'm thinking I don't have her.
Oh,
Oh, there she
I think she's going out and coming back in. I'm surprised, honestly, this hasn't happened more often with all the Zoom stuff we're doing.
Yeah.
I've had relatively few people freeze up, things like that.
You never know, right?
Yeah, yeah. And what is so your kids are staying through the 18th, you said, Gabby?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've just had a lot of IEP meetings. And then we're doing the remote learning plans now. So it's just been very busy.
Yeah. And you have one little one, or how many do you have? I'm trying to
I
remember.
have one, he's 6.
Okay, all right. I know. I remember seeing a very cool little guy coming in at various points to say hello to you.
He's my husband took him out. Yeah,
Yeah,
so busy. Hmm.
it is busy. So I don't have her cell handy. I don't know. I'm hoping her
I
computer hasn't just up and died on us.
um
Go.
All right. Well, Gabby's project, Gabby works in an early childhood special education school with a pretty heavy special ed caseload of children, many of whom are on the autism spectrum, some with developmental disabilities, other special ed designations. Her project centered around development and implementation of parent support groups with the goal of reducing stress among those parents. She'd worked there for a while and she'd gotten the impression that many of them were dealing with a lot of stress at home, and she wanted to be able to provide some support for those parents. Gabby divided her groups into two different groups, one for English speaking parents and one for Spanish speaking parents. And the reason for that was to reduce the time that would be needed to do all the translation in between the English speaking and the Spanish speaking parents. The groups were consisted of three main components. The first was a psychoeducational component in which she would teach parents about things such as normal childhood development, the benefits of visual supports for children on the autism spectrum, and common stressors that parents deal with when they have children with special needs. The second component was providing parents with information on community resources. And that may be on how to apply for social security benefits, applying for Medicaid, applying for SNAP, and also looking for workshops that might be helpful for them to be able to teach their children skills at home, such as toilet training, that kind of thing. The third component was providing parents with an emotional support component. I think probably ultimately this was maybe the most important, to get parents together on a more regular basis and help them to develop an emotional support network of parents. Prior, at the very beginning of the implementation, Gabby did a parent stress scale that unfortunately she did a pre-test, but because of the pandemic, she wasn't able to do a post-test to see how things, if the group would have worked to lower the stress levels of parents. During the pandemic, however, she continued to do her work through a different way by communicating with the Remind app, sending information to parents that way, through email, by phone call. She also put up some social emotional learning activities on the school's website and some general information for parents as well. During the course of her group, she tried to cover a bunch of different topics, such as the importance of social support, implementing a visual schedule at school or at home, especially for kids with autism, reflections and goals for 2020. I think just trying to get parents to focus on goals, not only for their children, but for themselves. Mental well-being was another topic, mindfulness and meditation. I think Gabby spent some time on trying to teach the parents some self-care to help them maybe deal with the stress of having a child with special needs, but also with other family relationships within the home. I think it sounds like the groups went fairly well. I think though during the course of the, during our cohort, you talked about the stress of being able to plan and implement the group, as well as take care of yours. And you mentioned in your project summary about being able to take care of your large caseload that you have, Gabby. So sounds like it's going to be a sustainable project. It's something that I think you talked about wanting to continue when you get back to school, to be able to provide those supports for parents.
Yes, I really hope so. I know it will look different because I mean, we have no idea when we're even coming back, right? So I've been thinking of putting lessons or arranging topics on the website, or or a short video. I'm not there yet where I'm making videos of myself, explaining something, but we'll see. Yeah, but thanks so much, Angie.
Right.
Yeah, and we got people in our cohort and people on the network that can help you with that, Gabby, when you're ready, because they're definitely, I think this crisis, a lot of people have learned a lot of new skills about how to, do their lessons and do things. But I want to give a shout out to both of you, but Gabby specifically, the work you did around parent engagement, the different ways you wrote about it on the schoolsocialwork.net site. Hundreds of people around the country have read those articles, shared them. In addition, you did the early childhood webinar. Angie, you did the high school webinar and joined that as a team member. And then you wrote about your kind of coalition building. Just one of the things that, as we wind this up today, that I think has been a real strength of our program, which is completely a credit to all of you. I mean, it was certainly something I hoped for, but I didn't know it would happen, is when we open the doors and people have come through from all the different places that they work, it hasn't really seemed to matter where your setting is, as long as there's a cohort that comes together around the basic kind of core ideas. And I think you're both a good example of that. I mean, you're in a specialized school in Chicago, Gabby, and you're in, Nebraska, which is a rural state to begin with, but you're in a rural part of Nebraska, right? I mean, you're outside of Omaha. So
Yes.
Here we are talking about, school social work, because it does cross all those state lines and all those regional differences. So speaking of, before we go, what I'm asking everybody to do is, if you have one piece of advice or one kind of words of wisdom to give anybody that might be thinking of applying to this program, what would it be?
Well, I would have to say, if you're thinking about it, and you feel like you have the time and you want to do something to bolster your own sense of professional development, then go for it. Don't hold back. Don't be afraid to jump on it. And it's honestly very affordable. That's the other thing. And I think just having the opportunity to network with other school social workers around the country has been a gift that I don't think you could ever, replace.
Great. Gabby, how about you?
I think this program really helps you to increase your confidence level, because as a school social worker, because you are an expert, and connecting with other people reinforces that. Like, wow, I do deal with really difficult situations, or I have tried this. This did help. It just really validates your experience. And I think that, we talked a lot about in the program about working in silos, and it's in schools, we really are alone, oftentimes we don't have somebody to say, what do you think of this? Or have some kind of clinical guidance, is this the best choice? So it is really nice to make those connections with others, and it does increase, it did definitely increase the confidence in myself to be a leader, to talk to administration about things, and just to develop, as a school social worker. So you will not regret participating in this program.
So, and thank you, both of you. And again, you just heard from people with 44 years combined experience. And what I love about what you both said, which again was not scripted or paid, I mean, you guys just said whatever you wanted to say, is it's very rooted in what I think we're trying to do with this, is that everybody comes to it with whatever experience level they've got, whatever needs they've got. And we're trying really hard to help people, get what they need. And what I am so excited about with people that are veteran professionals such as yourselves is that we're also looking to really build an ongoing network where people who have expertise, like I could totally see Check and Connect for the work you do. Angie, that's the name of it, right? I always get, that's the,
Yes, that's right.
there's a few that are similar, so I always don't want to get it wrong. But Check and Connect, and certainly the parent group work you've done, like there will be people on our 4,500 plus network now who want to know about how to do that stuff. And both of you are people that I could easily see them turning to say, hey, can you tell me how you did that? And all that stuff that we started in our program can continue. So I want to thank you both for being part of this. You've officially finished the seminar, so yay, you're done. We will catch you down the road. Everybody, please let us know if you have any questions. You can reach me at mcal17@luc.edu. And otherwise, thank you, Gabby and Angie.